Something strange had been happening for months, the kind of strange that feels small at first, like forgetting where keys were placed or hearing a sound in the house that could easily be blamed on pipes or wind. But slowly, those little moments began lining up into something heavier, something that felt planned, as if a hidden truth was pushing its way back into the light piece by piece, and the closer it came, the more uncomfortable everything felt. Like standing in a room that looked normal while knowing something terrible had once happened there, waiting to be remembered. Before we start, please subscribe if you haven't already. The man lived a simple life in a quiet neighborhood where every house looked nearly the same and every morning followed the same routine, waking before sunrise, making coffee that always tasted slightly burnt, and sitting by the window watching the street slowly come alive as people left for work. Children waited for school buses and stray dogs wandered between parked cars looking for scraps of food. And for years, nothing ever broke that rhythm, which was why it felt so strange when the nightmares started, because nothing in his real life seemed frightening enough to create them. At first, the dreams were blurry and hard to understand, more like feelings than images, a sense of running without knowing from what, the sound of heavy breathing close behind, and the smell of damp earth mixed with something metallic that made his stomach turn even after waking up. And every time he opened his eyes, his heart would be racing like he had just escaped something terrible, yet the room would be calm. The fan spinning slowly, the curtains moving softly in the breeze, and the world acting as if nothing was wrong. After a few weeks, the dreams became clearer, and he began seeing parts of places he did not recognize. A narrow alley with cracked concrete walls covered in old posters peeling away from the surface. A broken streetlight flickering above and puddles of dark water reflecting blurry shapes, and always there was fear, thick and heavy, like it was pressing against his chest, making it hard to breathe. And no matter how much he tried to wake himself up, his legs felt slow, like moving through deep water. The man tried to brush it off at first, blaming stress or lack of sleep, but the dreams kept returning night after night, and soon they began bleeding into his waking hours, because sometimes while walking down a normal street in daylight, he would suddenly feel the same cold fear crawl up his spine, and for a split second the world around him would seem unfamiliar, like the buildings had shifted slightly, like the road had been there before in another life. One afternoon while buying groceries, he passed by a small side road and froze without knowing why, his chest tightening as the smell of wet concrete and rust filled his nose even though it had not rained in days. And his mind flashed with an image of the same alley from his dreams, dark and narrow and filled with danger, and his hands began shaking so badly that he dropped the bag of vegetables he was holding, causing people around him to stare while he struggled to breathe like someone pulled from deep water too fast. That night the dream changed. Instead of running blindly, he was standing still in the alley, and for the first time he could hear voices. Two men were arguing in low, angry tones, words overlapping, full of rage and desperation. And though he could not see their faces clearly, he could feel their presence, tall shapes blocking the dim light, one of them waving his hands wildly while the other stood stiff and tense like a coiled spring about to snap. The man in the dream wanted to move, wanted to leave, wanted to shout, but his body would not listen. Then there was a sudden sharp sound, like something heavy hitting flesh, followed by a wet choking noise, and one of the figures collapsed to the ground, grabbing at his chest, while dark liquid spread across his shirt and dripped into the cracks in the pavement. And the other man stood frozen for a moment before backing away slowly, breathing hard, eyes wide with panic. The dream ended with the dying man's eyes staring straight at him. He woke up screaming. From that night on, the dreams came faster and stronger, replaying the scene again and again, but each time revealing a little more: the murderer's trembling hands, the fear on his face, the way he looked around desperately as if expecting someone to be watching. And each time the man realized something horrifying. The person watching was him, not just in the dream, but really there, standing at the end of the alley, hidden in the shadows. The man began to feel sick during the day, barely able to eat, constantly exhausted, because every time he closed his eyes, he saw the dying man's face, heard the choking breaths, and felt that heavy silence afterward where life had clearly left the body. He started researching dreams and memory, reading about trauma and how the brain sometimes hides painful moments to protect itself. But the more he read, the more uneasy he felt, because the descriptions matched his experience too well, especially stories about people forgetting entire events only to remember them years later through nightmares. The idea felt impossible at first. How could someone forget witnessing something so horrible? But deep down, something inside him already knew the answer, because the dreams did not feel imagined, they felt remembered. One evening, unable to stand the uncertainty anymore, the man decided to walk through the city, letting his feet guide him without thinking too much. And before he realized it, he was standing at the entrance of a narrow alley that looked exactly like the one from his dreams, the same cracked walls, the same faded posters, and even the same broken streetlight above, flickering weak yellow light onto the ground. His heart was pounding so hard it felt painful. The air smelled exactly the same. Slowly, carefully, he stepped inside. Every few steps brought a strange sense of familiarity, like walking through a place visited long ago. And as he moved deeper into the alley, flashes of memory began hitting him like sudden lightning, the sound of shouting, the fear in his chest, the way he had pressed himself against the wall trying not to be seen. Near the middle of the alley, he stopped. There was a dark stain on the ground, old and faded but still visible. His knees went weak. This was where it happened. Suddenly everything rushed back, not just the dream, but the full memory. Years ago, when he was younger, walking home late at night after work, taking a shortcut through this alley like he had many times before, when he heard angry voices and slowed down out of curiosity before realizing too late that something was very wrong, and hiding behind a stack of broken wooden boards as two men argued about money, betrayal, and something stolen. One man had pulled out a knife, the other had laughed nervously, and then the blade had gone into his chest. The man remembered the shock freezing his body, remembered wanting to run but being too scared to make a sound, remembered watching the murderer panic and flee, leaving the body behind, and remembered standing there long after in silence, staring at the lifeless eyes. But the most terrifying part came next. He remembered reporting nothing. He remembered walking away. He remembered convincing himself it was not his problem, that getting involved could ruin his life, that someone else would find the body, and that it was safer to forget. And over time, his mind had done exactly that. It erased the memory, buried it so deep that even he believed it never happened, until the nightmares began digging it back up. Tears filled his eyes as guilt crushed down on him like a heavy weight because a man had died and he had done nothing. As he stood there shaking, a voice spoke behind him, soft, calm, almost familiar. The man turned slowly. Standing at the entrance of the alley was another man, older now, face thinner, eyes tired, but instantly recognizable. It was the murderer. The man felt his blood turn cold. The murderer gave a sad smile and took a few steps closer, keeping his hands visible, as if not wanting to scare him. He said the voice had known this moment would come because people never truly forget what they bury, and memories always find a way back, especially when guilt is involved. The man tried to speak, but no words came out. The murderer explained that for years he had lived in fear of being found, checking news reports, watching faces in crowds, waiting for someone to recognize him, but nothing ever happened, and slowly he realized the only witness had vanished, not physically, but mentally. He said it was almost funny in a cruel way how the brain protected both of them, one from trauma, one from prison, but when the nightmares started, he knew the memory was waking up. He said he had been watching the man for weeks, following him quietly, noticing the fear growing in his eyes, and when he saw him walk into the alley tonight, he knew the truth had finally returned. The man backed away slowly, heart racing. He asked why he was here. The murderer's smile faded. He said because memories were dangerous, and once remembered, they did not stay quiet, and sooner or later guilt would push the man to speak, to tell someone, to go to the police. And he could not allow that. The man shook his head, begging, promising he would not say anything, but the murderer's eyes filled with a dark certainty. He said he had spent years running from his past, and he was not about to let it catch him now. The last thing the man saw was the glint of metal in the dim light. Neighbors later reported hearing a scream in the alley that night, short and sharp, followed by silence. The body was found the next morning near an old dark stain on the ground, almost like the alley had claimed another life in the same place. The police ruled it a robbery gone wrong, no suspects, no witnesses, and in the end, the truth remained buried once again. But sometimes, people walking past that alley late at night say they feel sudden fear for no reason, smell damp concrete mixed with something metallic, and for a brief moment see two shadowy figures standing in the dim light, one watching. One holding a knife, as if the memory of what happened there refuses to disappear completely, replaying itself over and over, waiting for the next person who might carry it away inside their mind. Until one day it comes back to be remembered again.